Good afternoon. Welcome to Democratic Services Committee on Monday the 27th of September 2021. The meeting is being broadcast live and it will be also available online after the meeting on the Swansea Council website. So shall we start on item 1 of the agenda, which is apologies for absence?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence from Councillors Sue Jones, Erica Kirshner, Linda Tyler-Lloyd and Leslie Walton.
Thank you. And item 2, disclosures of personal and prejudicial interest. Has anybody got any? Can't imagine. If there are, then highlight them if they come up. Right, item 3 is the minutes. If you all had a chance to read them. Has anybody got any comments? Any inaccuracies? Anything missing? If not, would somebody like to move them as a correct record? Wendy? Thank you. Seconder? Gloria? Is everybody in favour? Right, thank you. That item done. Right. Item 4, the results of the members' questionnaire on remote attendance. Is this over to you, Tracy?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is, members will recall that at the previous committee we decided that we'd send out a questionnaire to both councillors and officers around their experience over the last year and a bit around remote attendance and committee meetings. So the questionnaire was circulated to both councillors and CMT and heads of service on the 9th of August with a response deadline of the 30th of August. It was quite a tight deadline because we did want to make sure that we had sufficient time to look at the responses and prepare a report to bring back to this committee. So as I said, the questionnaire was circulated not only to members but also to officers, and in total we had 42 responses, 10 of which were from officers and 32 were from councillors. I've summarised in the covering report the main points to raise as a result of the questionnaire responses, but if I just go through them very briefly by way of summary. In total, nearly 93% of those that responded thought that the current remote working arrangements worked well, with 42.9% of those responding being of the view that they actually worked very well, which is very pleasing to see. The vast majority of those responding felt that the benefits of remote meeting attendance were predominantly that it saved time and it fitted in with their home life and other working commitments. It also cut down on travelling time to meetings, so therefore was more environmentally friendly and fitted in with our climate agenda, etc. And then a couple of those that responded did actually refer to the fact that it saved on finding time for parking and other issues that you may have in attending physical meetings, cutting down that travel time, etc. Disadvantages that were highlighted by those responded, including largely a focus on technology, which probably wouldn't come as any surprise to you. There were a number of responses that dealt with accessing the agenda and how to work to appliances, looking at reports. And I think we touched on that at the last committee meeting when we were actually thinking about what to put in the questionnaire, this difficulty about work not having paper versions, but having to work from online versions of reports. Other matters that were raised included lack of network. Also, quite interestingly, that missing of the personal interaction, so the personal contact, the informal chats that councillors and officers would have both before meetings and after the meeting. So again, that was perhaps not surprisingly something that was highlighted. In relation to hybrid meetings themselves, so this was question 5. The majority of those that responded were in favour of hybrid meetings. The only meeting which seemed to favour face-to-face meetings was, and again, this might not surprise you, ceremonial council. So that was the one where councillors certainly felt that they would like to return back to the chamber to experience what is a ceremonial council over and above all the other meetings that were highlighted in that question 5. Questions 6 to 10 dealt largely with officer attendance at meetings, whether chair should be present and whether there should be a minimum number of members and officers. The responses were overwhelmingly in favour of officer support for meetings, and I think I summarised this accurately, that relevant officers would attend any meetings as and when were needed. And then finally, just going on to question 11, this is the section that was on what further support could be offered to councillors. There was, again, not surprisingly, reference to having perhaps 2 devices so that you could access agendas more easily. And then ongoing training. So there was reference to Zoom training, but there was also reference to refresher training on how to use the technology. So I think that probably hopefully accurately summarises the questionnaire. It was pleased to see one comment from, I'm assuming it was a councillor that says it was actually nice to be asked. So that was quite nice to see, actually, and it kind of did make it feel worthwhile. There's nothing by way of an action stemming from this questionnaire. It is there, Chair, just for the committee to note. But we will be using the feedback from the questionnaire when we consider whether or not, or what to put in any hybrid policy going forward, and also what future support we can offer to both councillors and officers. So I don't think I have anything else to add, but if there are any questions or any comments, then I'll hand back to you, Chair.
Thank you. Anybody got any questions for Tracy, or want to make any comments about the questionnaire or the results of the questionnaires? I must admit I was a little disappointed at the number of councillors that bothered to reply. I thought a few more could have managed it. I know it was short notice, but it didn't take long to fill in, did it? No. Nothing else? Right, okay. So we move on to the next item, which is item 5, which is the Councillor Induction and Training Programme for 2022, and I think that one is Hugh.
Yes, thanks, Chair. The report just sets out the work carried out since the last meeting in regard to the Induction and Training Programme. It led at the last meeting to the establishment of a working group which met in August, whereby those councillors and myself and a few other officers had the opportunity to discuss what they thought we could focus on, what was needed, reflections and learning from 2017, and what we need to do to ensure it's fit for purpose of 2022. That's outlined, that the working group notes are attached as Appendix A, and to be honest, they're very good common sense approaches, things were raised there which were useful. Lots of the things that people want can be difficult to achieve, and I'm just looking at the induction programme note specifically about trying to avoid the old death by PowerPoint approach to learning. And I think we all, or most, would agree with that. However, it always leads to the next bit about how do you present training in a different way. Some things can be like a role play, a more focused, more dynamic approach, and that is well and good. But some things, sadly, will always be death by PowerPoint. But it's remembering then that they are short, to the point, not trying to do 4 topics in one training and leading to sort of 50 slides and just bombarding people. Shorter, sharper sessions certainly go down well with councillors. There's no doubt that e-learning has a big part to play in all of this, and perhaps some of the face-to-face, some of the training that we will do for the induction potentially could be recorded and put online for councillors to look at a later time. That's not as good as attending, because obviously if you've got a question, you can't ask your question. but it still allows you to have that insight. So you can't make that day, we run the course again, you miss it the second time. At least you can see what happened, and that allows dialogue with myself or any other relevant officer, so we can try and address the needs going forward. There's also, I said, e-learning, which WLGA do an immense amount of work on with local councils, looking at rolling out a platform of about 22 e-learning sites, subjects, and those will be helpful for people to log in 24/7 and do some work on that. So there's good stuff there. And I will mention sort of the marketplace event quickly as well. That was very well received back in 2017. Just to remind those who forget what the marketplace event was, we took over the George Hall, and we had every department represented there, and they were just there, basically just to talk to councillors if anyone came in. Learning curves from that were the George Hall was too small a venue, and without a shadow of a doubt, the recommendation going forward is that we'd use the Brangwyn Hall just for the space, but equally that allows people just to, you know, put names to faces, because you quickly get to know, oh, I've heard of Hugh Evans, well, that's who Hugh Evans is, that's Tracy Meredith, etc. And that makes your life easier, because councillors, and I think generally the humans, we like to put a name to a face. So that's a useful thing, but it also, people get elected, and they may not realise exactly how wide the scope of the council is. Even though you stood for election, you don't realise that the council has its fingers in lots of areas. And by setting out the departments in the room, it does allow people to think about the wider issues. So all of this in turn leads to Appendix B, and which sets out the proposed councillor induction and training programme. Obviously, I have left out dates and times and venues and lead officers at this stage. These are purely topics. You will see that the topics are on there sometimes once, twice, 3 times on occasion. That is because it's important that we try and factor these sessions in, perhaps one in the day, one in the evening, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. We've tried to look at these things to try and make it accessible to all. Some people work, some don't work, some have care responsibilities, and days are difficult, evenings are difficult. So we always try to assist with that. So what I particularly need you to look at today, I should say as well, this has been through CNT, well, via the directors to have a look at, and the comments have been built in, so the training areas have been identified. No doubt, as this moves on in the coming months, people will say to me, oh, we also need this report, because these things happen. It is a live document. I'm not going to close the door today and say nothing can be added, because things will be added, and perhaps things will be removed, or perhaps titles will change slightly. But what I'm keen to get to today, is there anything that's jumping out to you that is missing? Is there anything there that you think shouldn't be there? And of course, are the titles or the wording used correct? So if we deal with that element first, and then the second element I need you to consider, do you agree with those bits I put in bold marking what is compulsory training? Should there be anything else that's compulsory, or should something be removed as being compulsory? When we get into the discussions about being compulsory, I will say a little bit more, but I'll leave it at that at the moment. So over to you for dialogue.
June, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Hugh. It's very involved. But on the induction thing, will members be given a telephone directory of who to contact when they come onto the council? They don't know where to go to put in their complaints. Will they have guidance on that?
Right, there won't be a telephone directory. That has gone gosh, many years ago. And
Yeah.
what we were finding is the sections that were putting these things together were quickly finding that they were out of date by the time they were printed. What we've done a lot of work on in the last couple of years are generic email addresses. For argument's sake, highways at Swansea, democracy at Swansea. You know, so rather than perhaps emailing, Hugh.Evans, you can go to the right area. So if someone's off, you're going to get a response, and that is by far a better way to be working. And it means you're not waiting for someone on a fortnight's leave to come back and respond to you. And we've done that. We call it the spot list, the single point of contact list with community town councils, and it's worked very well. And councillors already have such a list, so we will continue to work in that vein. But to reflect one element for you, June, I'm a big advocate of appointing, what's the word I want to use? I forget the word I want to use. Someone to assist you, to assist new councillors who to contact, and that would tend to be the Dem Services team. So if there's a question, come to us. We will signpost you then to the right direction. I wouldn't want the councillor not to know who to go to. And Alison has very helpfully just sent me a note saying office of mentors, which is exactly what the word I was looking for. Thank you, Alison.
Wendy?
Hugh, you probably will disagree with me, but you know what I am for going to all these workshops, whatever. I'm all in favour. I've been to every one of them and I've done them all. So I think 23 should be compulsory councillors' allowance, because councillors still today don't know what they're entitled, what they should be having. I think that's but you might disagree, but I think it is. I think also the social media one should be, because there are a lot of councillors put on social media things they shouldn't. And just the councillors' allowance. So those three, I think, maybe should be compulsory when they start.
Yeah, can I just respond to 23 first? Again, it's little difference to me whether they're compulsory or not. But I will make the point on 23 council allowances, etc., that it is concerning to me, and I've echoed this several times, concerning to me the large number of councillors that do not claim allowances. I know that the IRPW, the Independent Remuneration Panel for Wales, have worked tirelessly to encourage councillors to take their allowances. And the point I will make honestly to all of you now, if and many councillors think they're doing well by not taking that money, that in turn puts those people that genuinely need the money in a difficult situation, because they feel then that they are the odd ones out by asking for it. So by you all taking it, it certainly normalises it, and that's been the message of the IRP for many a year, and I do understand that.
It is difficult too, because I was one of the ones that was abused via Facebook for getting my iPad. Now, since I've got money left in mine, but I bought my new iPad to use for agendas and also my printer, because I couldn't go through that again. I was heartbroken that somebody could think that I was ripping the people of Swansea off. And that's what it's basically down to. And I know you have dragged me to a computer to claim what I was landed not.
That's a very good point you're making there, Councillor Lewis. The fact of the matter is that the majority of authorities in Wales directly provide IT equipment to councillors. As such, there is no duty under the IRP regs to publish what has been given. However, in Swansea, we have a solution where it's bring your own device. So we are giving you an allowance to buy what you want to buy, obviously within a financial level. And because we do it this way, we must publish how much you've had and what you've spent it on. It's protecting the public purse. You know, then there will be a report coming to Dem Services Committee in due course, looking at the ICT allowance, etc. And obviously the dialogue will need to be had there about bring your own device or not. And I don't want to get into that much, but suffice to say though, there seem to be as many people who are huge fans of bring your own device as those who are against bring your own device. And that's something that you're going to have to discuss and then make a recommendation to council in due course for them to consider.
Thanks, Sue.
Anybody else? No, I've got a few points. I was surprised that the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act wasn't made compulsory because it's such an important act. It was one of them. And number 20, the introduction to scrutiny. It's only there compulsory for committee members. And surely it should be for all councillors. It might encourage more to actually take part in scrutiny. Okay,
as we're going into the compulsory element of things, I may as well just open up on this. I use the word compulsory or even mandatory loosely. The reality is we have very little powers to force a councillor to do any training. We can easily stop them from joining a committee, hence things like governance and audit, scrutiny, licensing, planning. We can say, if you don't do these courses, you're not good on the committee. For many other things, we have a stick, but we can't really do anything with the stick. If you say, no, we're not doing it, we can't force you. I think the Ombudsman wouldn't really support this as it being a breach of the code of conduct. So we try and, when we use the term compulsory, behind the scenes, I work very closely with the political group leaders to put pressure on them, to put pressure on the councillor to ensure that their group members do carry out the training. So it is a little pointless making too many things compulsory because people understand that. So we try and pick those areas that are essential. And so I'm with you with scrutiny. It is such an important area, but by forcing only the ones who are involved in the scrutiny process, hence the committee members, it's logical. I can't make the others do it, but I ensure that those courses are available to all. And that's the reasoning.
Thank you. There's another point. Could you explain items 59 and 60? I mean, 60 just says prevention. We didn't say prevention of what?
Okay, 60, we have had some dialogue about 60. We think, from looking back into 2017, it is prevention of poverty. And I say that because the person who delivered that session in 2017 was our poverty officer. So I would amend that. I would amend that to give it a more meaningful title going forward. 59, member-led authority. It's what this council is. It's not an officer-led authority. Councillors lead the way. Councillors instruct us. Obviously, we've got to work with them to ensure that we keep within legislation and guidelines, but it's a member-led authority. So it's quite different to many authorities, but very similar to other authorities. You know, you'd be surprised in some authorities, officers, behind the scenes run the show. In Swansea, it is councillor-led, and we will work to meet your expectations and your demands.
Thanks, Hugh. June, I think you put your hand up next.
Right. When you said compulsory, you can't make members attend. Can we point out for those that are mandatory that if you don't attend, you can't be a member of that specific committee? And 22 and 23, are they duplicates?
Quite possible duplicates. As I said, yes, they are duplicates. As I said at the beginning, there's a few things here that are on twice, purely because they would have had two separate dates against them.
Oh, right.
So yeah, I did think about taking them all out, but I thought, I'll leave them in because it's just a little easier for me. But perhaps I should have taken about it if it's confusing, and perhaps when it goes to council, perhaps I will delete them to make it a bit cleaner for everybody.
Right. Thank you, Hugh. Nick?
Thank you. Should equalities training also be compulsory, so that the often inconsistent understanding that some councillors may or may not have, as it's an increasingly complex area, can be remedied, and so that authorities can be helped in being more representative of the communities that they serve. So my own suggestion would be that equalities training, equality and diversity training should be also compulsory. Not to sit on any committee, but simply to do your job.
Okay. Perhaps if it's okay with you, Chair, I'm just thinking, we've had a few suggestions for things that should become compulsory. Should we deal with those few now, rather than get them lost in the wider debate? So yes, the suggestions, that we've had, it's councillor allowances, IRP, and the handbook to be compulsory, social media to be compulsory, equalities and diversity, and well-being. Those are the four that I've picked out. And I'm not sure if there are any others I've missed there. So do you think all of those should be compulsory, and obviously it's a recommendation to council then?
That's a proposal we've had. Does somebody second it?
Yeah, seconded. Seconded, yes.
Yeah.
Is everybody in favour?
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's carried.
Okay. Anything else that you'd like to see added to that compulsory list? Okay. Anything missing from this list that you feel needs to be added? No? Okay, let me just flip back to the recommendations, make sure I haven't missed anything. I think I've got everything I needed from that. And so with those amendments, are you happy that I progress this report with your recommendations to council? I'll aim for now, it'll be November council now.
Is everybody in favour?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Nick? Anybody against? No. Any abstentions? Okay. Thank you, Hugh. That's carried. Right. Shall we move on to the next item then, which is number 6, the interim statutory guidance on multi-location meetings. And is this Hugh? That's Hugh again?
I can do this. I'm not convinced with the title multi-location meetings personally, but that's what legislation has gone for. But perhaps I can just explain it briefly. It's where a number of people could be in different locations attending the same meeting, pretty much like we're doing here today. I'm physically in the Guildhall. You were all at multi-locations throughout. So it's pretty much what we would have been termed before, a hybrid meeting. It's along those lines, really. Just to get the terminology right. I've set out in Appendix A the interim statutory guidance on multi-location meetings. It is a lengthy document at 26 pages. I have actually started looking at a policy for us, which will take me some time, which I may mean to bring back to you at our next meeting, and that in turn will lead to some dialogue about it. But if any of you have looked at Appendix A, and you need to throw any suggestions in or any questions about that now, I'm more than willing to try and answer them, or to ensure that they are covered in my report, which will come back in due course, well, next month hopefully.
Got any queries? Any comments? Tracy?
Yeah, just a comment from me, of course. A lot of this guidance will be based on the Local Government Elections Wales Act, which came into force this year. So there are certain things that we do have to do as a council going forward, and this is just part of it in terms of a hybrid or multi-location policy that we'll have to look at. We may need to look at our constitution, but at the moment, this is something that all 22 authorities up and down Wales are currently looking at as well. So they're all working on their policies with some assistance from the WLGA. So it is a big piece of work, and I welcome Hugh's working on it, because I don't underestimate the amount of time that this may take. But I think, as I've said before, I think the questionnaire that was circulated is extremely useful, and they are the sort of considerations that we'll have to take into account when finalising any policy.
Yeah, and I suppose it was remiss that I should have mentioned as well, many of you will be aware that a significant amount of work has gone on in the Guildhall chamber, and will soon commence properly in the Gloucester room 2, enabling the authority to be fit for purpose for multi-location meetings, ensuring that the sound system is fit for purpose, and the cameras, etc., are fit for purpose. And the good news is that we received a grant from the Welsh Government, not to fund it all, but to certainly fund a significant amount of that scheme.
Thank you. Having looked through this appendix, it does raise a lot of interesting questions that we need to answer, doesn't it? Especially around the public. And how do they protest, and how do they take part? And how do you really know if members are present, especially when they turn the video off? Have we thought about any of the answers to these questions?
Well, elements of them are already in place. With the way we operate now. Should a member of the public wish to participate, they inform us. Was it by noon the previous working day, and we shall ensure they can ask their question at the meeting. So that's already in place, and that's enshrined in the Constitution. About being present and councillors, that tends to be an issue when it comes to a vote. The guidance is clear that it's for the monitoring officer to determine, which I've got to say I'm very sympathetic to the monitoring officer for that one. And clearly we need a robust sections detailing what we consider to be appropriate in that sense. But of course, you can guarantee the first time we adopt this, something will happen outside of that model, and nothing will ever fit in perfectly, because whenever you get a problem at home with your Wi-Fi, your network, your first thing is to blame the council, because the reality is it's your home network is the problem, and we can't do much about that.
There's still the issue of how the public can protest, because we've all been to council meetings where we've had large groups outside the chamber, and there were placards, and they've come into the chamber and brought up questions. When it's hybrid and perhaps there's only officers in the Guildhall, it's very difficult for the public to.
Well, I don't know. They can send emails. They can certainly use social media. There are a number of platforms they can use. I suspect, at some stage we are going to see a greater return to the Guildhall for formal meetings, but I can't imagine everyone ever coming. Not everyone always coming back in. So then you're in the situation that those who attend physically will see any protest, those from home won't. That's why the public protesting need to be smarter in the way they go about it. And it's difficult for me to answer that. That's for the public to consider and to find their own solution.
Okay. Anybody else got any queries? How do you want to take this forward, Hugh? Do you want to bring it to a future meeting as well?
I am hoping to bring this to November committee. I can't think of the date of the meeting top of my head now.
It's on the
8th of November.
8th,
Yeah.
yes.
That's what I'm hoping to do. But you know, if I failing that, it would be coming to. I may have to call it an additional meeting or whatever. Because there's a fair bit of work on this one.
Thank you. Tracy, did you put your hand up?
No, you may have seen the smile on my face. I think Hugh might be a bit overly optimistic there, trying to get it back to the November Dem services. Good luck, Hugh.
It is only a month away.
And 20 pages into the report.
Well done.
Thank you.
Right. So the recommendation is that you continue to prepare the multi-location meetings policy.
Yeah, for a future meeting, let's leave it
Future
slightly
meeting.
open.
Okay.
Slightly open there.
Is everybody in agreement to that? Right. Shall we move on to the next item? All right. Number 7, Democratic Services Committee annual reports. You've had them. You've all read them, I presume.
Yeah. Well, first point I want to make is huge thanks to Alison though for all the support that she's done in compiling these. It does take a lot of pressure off, and fair bit to Alison, she's done a fair bit of work in trying to modernise the style and layout of these, and again thanks, and she's even got pictures of the councillors in to try and promote it. I think it just helps the public a little bit. It just makes it a bit more personal, so that's quite useful. Obviously there's not much I can say about the reports in that they were relatively quiet years because of COVID and what have you. And the work of the Dem Services Committee certainly gets a bit busy in the run-up to a local government election. So, you know, we're going to be a lot more frequent than we've done possibly over the last couple of years or so. I've got nothing to add to what you've seen there. I'd like to thank the chair and the previous chair for their work and for their help in these documents. But the recommendation is that they proceed to council. The information, but they will proceed to council, I should say.
I think we're all in agreement with that. Anybody get any questions? Gloria? Oh, you're in agreement. You're just agreeing. Right, we're on to the last item. 8, which is the work plan for 2021-2022.
Yeah, I have my
Wendy.
hands up. Yeah, only to say that the photos on there Alison put up, I wish I looked like that now after 4.5 years.
I think mine is older, Wendy.
Never mind, I'm sure people would recognise you. Doesn't matter. Right. Meetings, the work plan. We've got to move the hybrid multi-location meeting policy into November as well. Would that make November agenda too large? Do we want to put another meeting in October, or do we want to move something into December? Tracy.
Just going to say you might want to consider an additional meeting, just because in the work plan you've got the diversity and democracy work, but it's in the January meeting. But I think that needs to be brought forward. You need to be considering that now, because we need to take a report back to council ideally before the end of the year.
So do you want to put it towards the end of October?
Well, if the work could be done by then, or the 8th of November one, I don't think we can run it any later than that.
Right, Louise?
Oh yeah, that was just my point. Yeah, so thank you. Just a reminder that we'd met outside the meeting to discuss the diversity and democracy, and we were looking to get something to council before the end of the year, weren't we? So if that could be brought to the November meeting, that would be really helpful.
I'm just a bit concerned that this November meeting's getting very big.
it should be okay with a bit of luck, because these are big things we've got to work through.
Yes.
The one point I'll make, down for January is the council induction and training programme. Hopefully that won't need to come back. That's purely pending council's recommendation of what they do. If council approve it, then there's no need for that to come back.
Right. So you're all happy we'll have 5 items in the November meeting? Right. Is there anything anybody else would like to see on our agendas? Is there any training or anything else you'd like to see in the future?
Sorry, can I just ask about the council expenses, costs of care? I'm unsure what you're expecting from me in that regard. I'm unsure what I'm looking to do, what you want to be right in that report.
I think it is not so much of a report as an item for just discussion.
About what? So I can prepare. That's what's worrying me a little bit. It's quite broad, and
it is quite broad. It was an item that was raised that people want to discuss why councillors are not claiming their expenses and what possible things could be done to encourage them to do so.
Okay.
Any other items? No? Okay then, well, I'll close the meeting. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Tracy.
Ta-ra.
Bye.
Everybody else? Bye.
Thanks, bye.
It's gone.